like I said, we got to learn how to be more. Hey, whatever. All
It's
right.
really not us.
I know.
What you need is a different person to do this. Like one of us needs to be replaced by like someone who has like,
Charisma.
a soul.
Yeah,
I've been beat down by, I don't know.
I guess. So, anyways, so what happened? We watched Metropolis and we decided let's watch old movies. I saw this on Amazon and I bought it. It was a list of 50 movies that are quote unquote out of this world. Anyway, so it's 50 sci-fi movies. So I think we're just going to make our way through them. So this is part 1 of 50.
Yeah.
And the first movie in here is A Trip to the Moon.
Have we done any movies off of there? Just Metropolis, right?
Metropolis, yeah.
That's number 2.
Yeah.
Okay.
Off to a good start.
All right. Well, so A Trip to the Moon. Everybody knows this movie. Probably.
Probably, yeah.
Just because it's the movie with the capsule or the shell that gets stuck in the moon guy's eye. Everyone knows that movie. Everyone knows that it's famous, I think.
Mhm.
I mean, it's from 1902, so it's 120 years old.
So, yeah, I mean, you think about movies like this and, one, I figured it would be longer because Metropolis was like more or less like a feature
Was really long.
length movie. Yeah, yeah. And so, the runtime for this movie is like, 12 to 15 minutes, depending on where you cut it. And so that was surprising, first off. And then, yeah, it's so quaint, I guess. So we watched Metropolis and we talked about how we thought it was going to be a lot more hokey, black and white, low production value, whatever. This movie is more of what we expected.
Yeah. Metropolis is like decently modern for being super duper old. It's like decently modern, I guess, cinema. But this one is like, this feels like you're watching a 120-year-old thing,
Yeah. Yeah. So the story of this movie really starts in 1865 with Jules Verne writing the novel From the Earth to the Moon. And so we watched this 12-minute movie a couple of times. And the first time I watched it, I really had no idea what was going on. You can kind of figure it out with context clues. But then when I read like the synopsis for Jules Verne's book, it made a lot more sense.
You get it. It's like it's pretty basic. Like the story, obviously,
Yeah.
So it's like 12 minutes long or like 13 minutes long.
Yeah.
And it was noted for its absurdly long length when it came out.
Yeah, man. I mean, it seems like cinema for the few years that it had existed was more like an amusement park thing. Like you go in and look, it's the world's tallest man, or look, we captured on film grass. It's
right.
That's what it was.
I mean, the guy was a magician.
Right. No.
The
So
director.
before that, that's what this was. And then this guy comes in, George Méliès, and he's a magician, and he kind of, I guess, revolutionized in some ways what it even means to have a film, like to make a film.
Yeah, I think it's like a pioneer of narrative film, which is a film with a story, which is also known as a film, basically,
Yeah.
now. So I like before, you're right. It's like, hey, this is like a dude flexing for three. It's like a GIF, like, come see the GIF booth at like the county
booth.
fair. Oh, we're gonna have
Problems?
problems, son.
Throw hands? Yeah. So, yeah, that's what it was. And then this guy comes in, and it's not even like, we watched this 12-minute movie and I was like, hey, let's read this Wikipedia article to learn a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
And like 8 tabs later, you're like, so deep into this. Oh my God, this is so much
You
more
said like
complex.
Jules Verne, that was the first time the term spaceship was used, is in that book.
Yeah. So Jules Verne writes this book in 1865. And then there's an opera called A Voyage to the Moon in like 1875.
Yeah.
And you can even see in the opera that the sets that they created, the look, it's very similar to what, the 1902 movie resembles.
Yeah.
And so then after the opera, I think, is when they first coined the term spaceship, right? So the first time some Gazette or something was talking about it, that's when they first used that.
Yeah, it's pretty nuts.
Yeah. It's like things we take for granted had an origin somewhere.
Yeah. Isn't it weird that like even then sci-fi is like based on a book? You know what I mean?
What do you mean?
like everything is like based on I feel like everything's based on some sort of other like external media. And so even this is like based on.
Oh, I see what you mean. But I mean, books are like, anybody could write a book. It takes one person. One person can, if they know a language, can come up with an entire world.
But it wasn't an original idea is what I mean.
I see.
The Trip to the Moon expanded universe originated with, a book, not with the movie itself. So we can talk about like a lot of stuff with the history and all. That's the interesting stuff, right? Obviously. But like the movie itself. So like the movie, it's like 12 minutes long. These wizards are like planning on going to the moon by shooting themselves out of a giant cannon, right?
Yeah.
Basically it. And then they do. Then they go there. They meet strange moon men. They murder them almost immediately.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of antagonistic, but still.
Sure.
They meet their queen.
Or king?
Or I thought it was a goddess or something. Was it not?
That was a dude.
Whatever.
They meet their royalty.
They kill their
and
king,
murder them, yes.
And then they run away, fall off the moon.
Mm-hmm. Back onto Earth.
Go back to Earth. They brought one of the moon people to like be enslaved and march through like the town center.
Uh-huh.
And everyone cheers. The end.
That's the story. Yeah. And so I saw that before any like background knowledge. And I looked at it and I was like, what?
So does it hold up?
You have to do your work. But once you do that, yeah, it holds up.
Like it would be completely uninteresting. Well,
without context,
without historical context, like no one's gonna like just take our day at work. I'm gonna load up a trip. No, right?
No. But with context, I think it's pretty interesting. So
it's like historically interesting.
Correct.
Right. But it's not still compelling or anything like that.
No.
It's just kind of cool. Like, whoa, that's what they did back then.
Right. And so the first time I saw it, a lot of these things kind of flew over my head. And, I wasn't sure if there was sound or not in the original. There wasn't. So in the original movie, the way that people saw it back then, it's 1902. And maybe your version is in black and white. There might be a narrator who's telling you kind of what is going on. And then the version that I saw, it was like in this color, and I was confused. I was like, "What is this? Like, did they try to like colorize it in the 70s or something?" But apparently, even back then, they like hand painted, like frames to give that like color on screen.
And it looks terrible.
It does.
It doesn't look good,
but if you read the reviews, what had happened? Let's see. I think the price was very high for the movie, and so Melies had like a difficult time apparently like getting theaters to show it. Then he like kind of had a free screening.
Well, it was 12 minutes long, so
right. And then he had a free
8
screening
times longer than the average movie back then.
Yeah, and the crowds went wild, and apparently they were very mesmerized by the colors and everything.
Yeah. I mean, it's 1902. I mean,
sure,
they're mesmerized by moving pictures. Period. If it's colorized, like they lose their minds, basically.
Yeah. So I mean, that was one thing that was right off the bat just amazing, and then like we laugh at it because it's so like simplistic, sort of.
Yeah.
But there's so many things in there that I was shocked existed back then. Like so Melly, as we said, was a magician.
Mm-hmm.
And so he introduced a lot of like in-camera like effects, which I had no idea.
Yeah, there are a lot of effects like where he'll show like the actors are doing stuff and then they'll cut and then they'll, they're like holding the telescope and then it cuts and they're holding like chairs.
Yeah, or that, I don't know, that'd be like stop motion maybe or something.
Is that not a double exposure?
No, double exposure would be when you, let's say you have like the film. I take a photo of you, right, and I black out or green out, the entire back, and then I take another photo, and then I put the two together, and it looks like
you put something else back there. I see.
Yeah, so you had double exposure. You had cuts, like jump cuts. You slow down film.
Yeah,
the one that blew my mind most was that he had dissolves, like the fades between scenes.
Yeah, the set design was pretty cool. The props were pretty cool, like the little bullet they get in.
Yeah. So just like breaking this movie down, I know that for this one, it's only like 12 minutes long. This doesn't really make much sense, but I think for the future, it helps to have like a framework for how we talk about movies. So I have it written down here. But first thing I have is like concept.
Okay.
So I think even in the earliest days, any movie can succeed in this because I don't know, I feel like conceptually we've had these imaginations for thousands of years and we can think of fantastical things.
It depends on how far you want to break it down because like the concept is actually like the concept of even having a story in a film at all. Like, that's like the concept,
It's like a meta concept. Right. But I mean, in the film, like, hey, let's go to the moon. It wasn't Millie's idea. It was the Jules Verne, right? He like introduced that maybe, or he probably got inspired, but whatever.
Like a cave drawing somewhere of like a
Yeah.
cannon shooting at the moon.
Or it's like a giant bow and arrow, like some caveman. It's like, if we build a giant enough bow and arrow, we can shoot ourselves into the stars. Yeah.
True. Is that probably true?
Probably. Like I said, imagination's like, I mean, that.
No, I mean, like, could you build a giant bow and arrow and shoot yourself to the moon? Probably not, but you probably shoot yourself pretty high.
I mean, why not?
It would just all of human society worked on it.
I don't see why not.
Well, anyways.
So I mean, conceptually, I think it's interesting.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was way interesting back then.
Mm-hmm. And they talked about it was like after the Civil War, it was the Baltimore Gun Club in Jules Verne's book.
Right.
That the president was like, let's build a cannon and shoot someone to the moon. It seems, I mean, it's Da Vinci-esque.
I like how they have no plan to get back.
And so then, yeah, story. We covered the story. I mean, it's satirical a little bit.
So yeah, it's kind of nice. It's like it's kind of goofy little movie, but it has like more stuff going on than you would expect, I guess. Yeah, there is like a whole satirical element about like kind of criticizing colonialism.
Yeah,
because like they go to the moon,
I guess.
They kill the native inhabitants, like immediately, and they enslave one and bring it back, and like everyone's just like super happy,
right? And we've seen like those like World's Fair photos and stuff where countries will just have like people in cages.
Yeah.
It's pretty bad. Yeah. I mean, like I was saying, this movie sometimes felt like a Whitest Kids You Know, like sketch sort of. But the story, right? Simplistic. And while we maybe had to like read on Wikipedia what was happening to figure it out, apparently for some of the screenings, they would have like narrators there to kind of break down what's going on.
You think like back then, like people were reviewing movies and like, well, you know, I don't know. I think about like when Avatar came out in like 2004, like, well, the special effects are amazing, but the story is just not, you know, like people say that about this. Like, well,
yeah, I think so. I mean, like, I think you can compare this to like opera.
Yeah.
Or because people had stage plays, which I think were probably pretty amazing, but I imagine most people weren't able to go to those. So this is sort of like entertainment for the masses.
I don't know. I mean, I really don't know the context of how it was viewed or like how much you put a nickel in and like you got to, I don't know. You know, I looked up, did you see it cost him 10,000 francs to produce this movie?
Yeah.
So I don't know how much that is today. I looked up $10,000 in 1902 dollars. It's $330,000 today, but I don't know what the conversion rate between francs. I tried to look it up. I went to historicalstatistics.org.
Okay.
And it has a thing where you can put in like 10,000 francs in 1902 is what in today's dollars, and it didn't have the data, so it couldn't do it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I mean,
so again, I don't know. Something like that, though.
Characters, that's kind of interesting, right? I suppose if you're really, like, people don't get famous from documentaries, right?
I feel like Jodorowsky might have.
I guess so, fine.
I guess careers can get revived from documentaries for sure.
That's fine. I guess my point is, before this, it seems like if you don't have narrative film, if all you're doing is just showing like some dude flexing on a beach, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess you could get famous from that. But these actors, they're like just unnamed. I mean, people had to do research to figure out who these people even were.
Well, film, especially then, was not like as widely disseminated. And it was also like, where are you going to talk about it? And also like like, again, his big thing was, hey, let's have the characters. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like, you wouldn't have like a favorite actor or something.
But there like were no title cards, like beginning, end cards.
There's no dialogue
like
at all.
But I mean, I think comparing it to like opera is pretty apt. Like if you go into an opera, right?
But they have like a cast and stuff. Like
right, for an opera, you have like the bill or whatever, right?
Yeah.
You have the list of characters, the actors. You have maybe a poster that says, look, this, singer is going to be there. And also, I guess with opera, just on a tangent, right? A lot of times, maybe you have to know the story beforehand. You're not going to like go into an opera and learn what's going on. Like somebody usually explains it a little bit.
Right. Like you usually know the story.
Right.
Beforehand.
So I think, coming from that, this movie makes a lot more sense. It's not meant to be like, maybe like a standalone.
It's meant to be more just like a novelty, I think.
Right. Like those,
whatever those.
What are those called? Kinetoscopes?
Cryptographs? Like what are those called? I don't know.
That thing. Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
It's like a novelty. You're right.
Yeah, so it's more like you put it, you spend your nickel and like you get some taffy and you you look at the picture, Because like again, like it was people were like, I don't know if surprised or shocked, or it was notable how long it was. Like most movies are like, I guess like 3-4 minutes long. And it was just like, yeah, like a vase breaking or something. Probably not even that. Probably,
Right. Well,
probably less action.
Well, now we've seen those Nope.
Yeah.
It's like the horse, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and people were just dumbfounded by the fact that it was a thing that moved.
Right. Like, there's no one behind there. Yeah.
You remember that thing with the train that's like coming at you? You've seen that before, right?
Probably.
There's like a old timey, I don't know many details about it, but it's like of a train coming at the camera, like right next to it. And like, in the theaters, people like jumped out of the way because they were,
it's funny.
They were dumb.
Yeah. Yeah. What are you going to do?
They didn't understand things.
I mean, to be fair, that's probably the smart thing to do is jump out of the way.
Yeah.
I don't know. You don't want to be that idiot that dies in the theater because a train hits you.
But
he didn't get out of the way. I don't know. Everything up to that point in their lives told them to jump, except for I ain't gonna look like no wuss. You know what I mean?
But they know.
I don't know.
They know that there's not a freaking train there. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm not really making fun of them, but it's just like a notable thing.
Yeah. I understand. And then filmography, right? So we already, that's the next thing. We already kind of talked about it. I'm shocked by the effects that he had. He had like a dolly where he pulled himself towards the camera.
The moon shot, like where they're going to the moon and the moon is getting closer. What you're talking about is what they actually did is they didn't move the camera closer because the camera is like probably 8 tons or something.
Sure.
They just got a guy on like a like a rope and like pulled him closer to the camera.
Yeah, I mean it does the same thing.
It's cool, like innovative techniques.
It is.
At the time. Do you remember how he discovered that double exposure thing
or the stop motion that you could cut? Yeah. So
yeah, whatever that's called.
So first of all, the people who invented this camera in the first place, right?
Lumiere,
the Lumiere brothers. Méliès tried to get a camera so he could make his own movies. They didn't give it to him. They gave him a projector, and he reverse engineered his own camera. So that's nuts. First off. And then, while he was trying to record something, the film or whatever got jammed. And so, you're recording, people walking by on a street, and then film kind of messes up. You have 10 seconds of nothing. And then it starts again.
I think it jammed. He was recording a street in France somewhere, and it jammed. And then he hit it like you do, I guess. And then it unjammed. And then when he watched it, he saw that it immediately turned these people into,
right.
Other people.
But you cut from these people walking into 10 seconds later or whatever it is.
Yeah.
He said a carriage became a hearse, whatever. And I mean, he just stumbled upon that.
Yeah.
But it's the most basic editing technique you have is a cut.
We could do it now if we're not lazy, but we are.
Do what?
You could do it and just replace it with a.
Yeah. Just what is it? I am blown away by all the things he did. The one thing that did stand out to me was the lack of, I guess, focal lengths, whatever. But it's just, if you could just pick up a camera, even if it wasn't mobile, just to be closer to somebody's face, closer to the action, it's so much more intimate. I imagine,
well, it makes sense. It's 1902. So like you said, they're starting from a framework of operas and plays. So that where they put the camera is just you're watching a play.
Right.
Really. I mean, it makes sense. That's where you'd start.
It makes sense. It makes sense.
I mean, the fact that you could put the camera up there or something is
right. Or a low angle shot or whatever.
Mind blowing.
It's just funny to me that they had these things that I would consider relatively advanced, with the editing and the cutting, but the actual filming techniques, they hadn't, gotten there yet. Yeah. And then the next up, set design. I think that's one thing that they probably already had a leg up on. This isn't something that they had to, invent from scratch.
They did a lot of work on the sets.
For sure. But I mean,
the concepts themselves, yeah.
Yeah, operas
they
had these
good.
things, plays had these. Yeah. They had moving sets, formidable background, elements were moving.
Yeah, costumes, moon people.
Yeah, the Selenites
from had it all.
The goddess Selene. Yeah.
The Greek moon goddess? Is that what it is?
Yes. Yeah, in the very beginning, I mean, the first shot is the wizard, having their yelling session, and you have this great map painting in the back. They're props. They're big, and you can see exactly what they are.
Yeah.
The coloring, while a little bit jarring, helps to.
The colorizing. Do you want to talk about? So you talked about how they painted every frame, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when they were trying to colorize a lot, I was reading that they had an assembly line of people where it's I guess it was just your job is to color frame 128 with red, and you're just ugh. And you just do that over and over.
Right. So it's not they colored one copy and copied it.
Right. They had
every single like film print had to be individually colored.
Right, which is completely nuts, right?
Yeah. It's like some Gutenberg, like monks copying like books.
Yeah. So that's nuts. We saw the colorized version, and I didn't think it looked as good because the color is kind of sloppy. Good job, guys. But it kind of like obscures the detail a little bit.
Maybe, yeah.
Whatever. Like, who cares?
I think it adds to the fantastical nature of it.
I'm sure it did
it did
greatly
better because of it then.
I'm sure back then it blew their minds off, but like,
yeah.
But to us,
yeah. But even now, I'd rather watch it in color. It has a different feel because of it. So yeah, after set design sound, I mean, there is no sound. We started watching, and there's like some like 1980s
like techno synth, like
right,
like I don't know.
A lot of people have like their own little soundtrack that they add on top of this. What was a silent film, and it's like you can play like some piano or like some Tchaikovsky something.
What I would want is like what they would have played at the time, because they could play music over it at the time.
I mean, they didn't play music, but
they could have.
Like for example, Metropolis, right? Like they had the score
like
from what orchestra. They played, and that's what we heard, and
right.
It fits.
But this was like had an electric guitar and like synth.
Like the drum pattern was like smooth jazz. It felt like it was elevating the film
a lot.
Like, yeah.
It felt like one of those like lo-fi hip hop videos.
Yeah.
Like you could just put this film like looped with like that.
Right. No, you're right.
Anyway, yeah. So that
the acting,
the overacting. That's just what people did back.
You got to do it, yeah.
And they're stage actors, and they're like in plays and stuff. So it's just like a lot of doing this.
The other thing that adds to that, I think, I don't know, it's probably 15 FPS that this was shot at.
Yeah.
Like it's not shot at like 24, 25 that we're used to seeing in theaters. And so
it makes it look faster, right?
Right. It makes it look like much jittery, like fast. And so their acting is like, look like ants, marching and stuff. And like the only emotions that they can convey, they all look the same. You have to use context clues like surprise, shock, anger, sadness. Like it's all just the same.
Yeah.
There's no nuance for sure.
There's no sound. There's no dialogue. And like you're also very far away. There's no close-up. So whatever.
I will say there was that one guy doing like backflips and like all these crazy like martial arts.
Yeah, that was cool for him, I guess.
That I mean, it's just it's fun to see these things that match up to more recent events. And some things are just like so obscure and different.
Yeah.
Like it feels anachronistic, right? This guy's like doing backflips and
just born at the wrong time,
suppose.
So there's no close-ups or anything. So you have to overact.
And because of that, I suppose, I mean, the effect of having a fixed camera, a certain distance away, I mean, it creates like a sense of like detachment.
Yes.
Relative to what we're used to nowadays with, close-ups and lingering shots, these sorts of things.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what's missing from this film.
The language of cinema.
Sure.
Not yet created, I guess. Did you say the guy's name?
George Méliès?
Yeah, the director. Yeah, we talked about it. So the whole point of talking about this is like, we're going through like a sci-fi thing, right? From 1 to 50.
50, apparently.
Yeah, apparently. So like, what do you think about this film in terms of its like importance to science fiction film or whatever, If you have to start somewhere, I guess you start here. It makes sense.
If you have to start somewhere, you probably start with mythology. I mean, you could go back, whatever, because from this movie, you go back to Jules Verne and what he's talking about the moon. But from there, you could go back to like whatever story, but like Greek mythology and
but that's
the human imagination. Fantasy becomes science fiction.
But science, I feel like
this is almost fantasy. So this is what's interesting, right? If you were to go back to like 1900 and what they're doing is using science, like, hey, we have cannons, they can launch this. What if we created this device and we could launch people? There's science there, but
that's what makes it science fiction to me.
It does, but
as opposed to magic.
But looking at it now from this lens, it's like fantasy, right? It's like
kind of, yeah.
It's like Up. Would you call Up science fiction?
Yeah.
Like not really. That's what's so funny is like it because it's so
quaint,
silly, the idea.
Yeah.
I mean, okay, so tangent number 2. There actually was, so I looked and saw, did anybody ever try this? And so there's a guy, Gerald Bull, I think, in Canada. He was in like Canadian military with McGill University. they teamed up, and in like the 50s, 60s, they actually did create like a massive space gun laser to like launch objects, but they didn't like clear the atmosphere. They did like suborbital.
But they made a cannon and shot
16-inch
like just
projectiles.
They had like data recording devices or something.
Yeah,
there weren't people in it.
Not people, not monkeys, not apes, not dogs. Nothing.
They made like a big cannon just gather data on like
I think re-entry and stuff.
Okay,
and eventually they got it to where like they were launching rockets.
And this was in like the 50s.
50s and 60s, yeah. And eventually they, I think, like shut it down because the funding went to actual rockets, but
things that actually work.
But you know, so there is some.
It's not completely ridiculous, completely and utterly ridiculous,
right? But like again, would you call up science fiction? That's sort of that's funny. I mean, I think back in the day, I mean, the term sci-fi didn't probably even exist. Like Jules Verne, his books are what, fantasy, right? That's how they would probably say it. Like Journey to the Center of the Earth.
I don't know.
Probably fantasy. I mean, that's how they'd look at it.
I don't know. I mean, for me,
I think it's like half and half.
It's hard to define these things. They don't have like
Sure.
really clear definitions, but it's like the application of scientific theories or thoughts or machines, as opposed to like magic to accomplish things that are fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a gray line, but yeah, I agree.
Like science
this is
fiction,
sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, the difference between like Star Wars and like fantasy is like, you could just change the X-wings to horses and you'd be like almost famous, you know?
I was going to say that this does more for fiction than for the science part, but even Méliès, like his earlier works in like 1899, he did like a 6-minute Cinderella short story, which is, you know, similar in how it looks to this. But the subject matter, that I suppose would be more fiction. And so, yeah, this one added a science element, I suppose.
Why do you think it like, he made a lot of film. He made like 400 movies.
Yeah.
Movies.
Things, totaling 2 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, why do you think this one has stood the test of time, I guess?
I think it back then, especially, I think it just takes like one or two like iconic shots.
Yeah.
And
the moon
it just
thing
stays
is like
in
iconic,
your head.
Right.
And we talked about it with Metropolis. And the cover of this book.
Yeah, it's that C-3PO robot.
Yeah, it's the, you know, it was Hell or whatever, the android. And
1L.
Yeah, just these iconic shots that I think just linger with people.
Yeah.
And that's what's different about movies versus books. I mean, you could have illustrations, I guess, in books, but to see it like come to life, I think is very exciting.
Again, it's hard to tell because like we're not film historians or whatever. And that should be abundantly clear. But like, it's hard to tell without seeing all the other movies that were around at the time. If they were complete shit, you're like, oh well, yeah, like.
Yeah.
No wonder.
But when we saw Cinderella, and it's similar, right?
Right. Yeah.
The acting is similar. The set design maybe isn't as good or fantastical.
Mm-hmm.
This movie, I mean, so back then they didn't have like Dropbox. So they, I don't know. It
was like a literal box. Like you just put your stuff in. Yeah.
It's going into the cloud and they just like lift it away from like nobody can reach it. But you know, the prints of this movie were actually like a lot of them were actually like melted down.
Oh, okay. So do you want to talk about that? Like,
yeah, sure.
So like, he died in disgrace.
Méliès.
Right? Like,
it's Encyclopedia Britannica said he died in poverty, but some other sources say like, no. Like people went up to him afterwards and they're like, dude, you're so great. Like
on the street.
Yeah.
Like outside. Dude, I love your movies.
And I mean, we should mention there's a movie that's like based on him.
Hugo?
Yeah. So
I've never seen that movie. Scorsese directed it, right? I think he did. I could be totally wrong, but I'm pretty
We'll cut it out.
Sure.
We'll make you look smart.
All right.
But apparently it's a good movie.
It was directed by
Martin Scorsese.
So apparently in 1917, World War I and all, like the French military occupied his offices and they melted down his films to get traces. It said specifically trace amounts of silver and celluloid from the film to make boot heels.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I mean, so his films were like rediscovered afterwards, and like
that's nuts, man.
And their significance. I mean, the people, they were ascribed significance in the context of science fiction. It seems, you know, in like the 20s, 30s,
kind of
later,
maybe.
So you know, there's some power that those historians, whatever, those people had in like determining this film's place in
you want to talk about
science fiction.
Rampant piracy.
Yeah. So so
Dude.
Thomas Edison apparently wasn't a great dude. Like everything I read, I was always so negative.
You should never read more. Like if you read deeply into anybody, especially anybody born before like 1980, like 1984, like it gets bad like
really fast. Yeah.
Well, anyway, apparently freaking Thomas Edison ripped off his movie. Like he just they sent like because it was just the literal films.
What do they say? There was like an Algerian copy, is what they think.
Well, he sent
Edison
one
got.
That's one he got. He sent some to America. Yeah, I remember they said that they sent one to like Algeria. He's like, just show this in Algeria. And he's like, no problem, boss. And
Edison got it, and then Edison like made his own colored versions.
He made his own colored versions. I think he like just said that it was his movie also.
Crazy, man.
Like he's like, yeah, this is my movie.
And so then Méliès opened like a Star Film, his production company office in America, copyrighted the film.
They had difficulty like enforcing the copyright from France in 1902, so he had to open an office in America to copyright the film in America. But by that time, like it was not just by Edison; it was like pirated by like a bunch of people,
right?
Who just like got the film copied, it, showed it to people, and just took the money from it and didn't give him anything.
That's wild.
And nuts.
I mean, I don't know if
did he have enough light bulb money? Like, what was he doing?
Right. I guess this is an interesting conversation, right? Because you could pirate films. Like that's an experience, right? Then you can't pirate an opera. You can rip it off, but you still have to pay actors, have a set, have a venue, all this stuff,
true.
Right?
Yeah, weird.
You can't pirate books. I mean, you kind of can, but right, you still have to like create the book, have it like be printed. Like it costs money. But if you pirate a movie like this, if you're Edison, whatever, and you have like a venue to show it, it's just, like a cash just revolving. You just have to have seating. That's
you just pay people to watch it. So if you have a copy, you don't have to give any money to anybody.
It's like the first time that, I guess, what is it? The overhead's pretty low on piracy in this case. Crazy.
You wouldn't steal a car.
You wouldn't steal a phonograph? Or I don't know.
What is it called? Whatever.
Pictograph? A kaleidoscope? A Nickelodeon?
Oh, right. Oh, man. Anything else?
There's so much. Like, I just open up tab
There's
after tab after tab.
There's a lot more than I thought. Like, I thought, it's this quaint little movie where everyone gyrates like this and it kind of looks like crap. I thought that was going to be it, but there's a lot more to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it deserves credit, right, for creating this. And it's just people messing around. Right? That's
kind of. It's a much more amateurish because like there is no profession of filmmaking really.
Yeah, Screen Actors Guild.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so weird that like Metropolis is like 1927. Is that right?
Something like that.
That's not that.
Like 25 years. I mean, well, it is if you think of it that way. It's 1995 versus 2020.
I know, but like the movies are wildly like night and day, dude.
Sure. I mean, it's like comparing Blade 1 and Avengers Endgame, or even more than that.
They're much more close than these two are.
Yeah, you're right.
I mean, like sets, it's 2 hours long. There's close-ups. You know what I mean? Like all the stuff.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. The movies in here in this book seem interesting. You pick out these 50 movies, and you put them in like little box. And if you're born, it's like 90s or something. You look back, and you're not going to see all of the historical context, right? You're not going to have seen every movie in like 1930.
Yeah.
You can't put this in its proper place. In context, if you just see this one movie in this 1902 movie by itself, and the next movie you've seen is 1927, right? You ascribe, I think, a lot more to this one movie than maybe it deserves. I mean, I think, for example, we do that with like Star Wars and whatnot. Like 80s are a little bit different, but you look back and, you look at something like Star Wars, Blade Runner, whatever, and you think, wow, it's so ahead of its time. It's this and that. But then, if you really branch out a few years and watch the other movies around it, you realize, oh, it was a part of, this trend, or there were other movies that did this before, after, just not as good.
There's always stuff around it. The same thing when you look at anything, like when you look at it at the surface, it's like, oh, the Wright brothers invented the airplane. No one had any idea. Like they just worked in their bicycle shop and they made a plane. It's like, no, like there were like 80 guys everywhere working on it, and they just happened to be maybe not even the first. I think there's like some debate that some other guy like flew like 2 days before something. I don't know.
Right.
Some guy in France or something. But when it comes down to it, it's like, okay, but they're famous for a reason. It's like they
So when I look at a movie like this, I feel like we're reviewing not necessarily just the movie, but like we're looking at,
especially this,
we're looking at like the entire landscape of movies.
Well, the point I think is if we go through and we watch all these 50 movies, we don't die before then somehow.
Yeah.
Like you will have
I guess you see the evolution.
You will have a really good understanding of like the evolution of like science fiction in cinema.
Yeah.
Better ourselves for no particular purpose.
I mean, if this is called bettering. The one thing I'll say, it's funny that back then movies looked like this, but there was everybody was super positive about it.
Yeah.
I kind of compare it to like video games back in the 90s. Like you remember playing, like Final Fantasy VII, for example.
Yeah.
We played that game and, we look at it now and it looks obviously terrible.
It's terrible, yeah.
Terrible. But for the time, it looked amazing. But not only that, it's still playable now and you still get it because your mind kind of fills in like, some of the things. I feel like that's sort of a similar to what happened, back then. Like maybe things like plays, operas, books, they were already kind of, mature, they were already kind of where they're going to be. And then this one was starting off, but very quickly it kind of caught up. Like video games sort of caught up 15, 20
like
years.
Real life, you mean?
Yeah, like, Final Fantasy, you go from like even Final Fantasy like 6 or something.
Well, I think like just compared to everything they had around them, like it wasn't like worse,
Yeah.
It was probably better.
Sure.
With the sets and everything.
Mm.
Like they weren't like, this looks like crap.
Yeah.
Compared to like play.
But I mean, no, when we saw like, when people first played like 7, Final Fantasy 7 in like 97,
that was amazing, yeah.
That was amazing, right? They weren't necessarily comparing it to like Jurassic Park, though.
Yeah, that's true. It's a new technology, so it's like novel and yeah.
Yeah.
You gonna make another Mass Effect game?
Like a sequel?
What I heard.
They should make a prequel. That'd be cool.
Well, I don't know what it's gonna be, but it's gonna be because they made Mass Effect Andromeda. You remember that, right? Like the legendarily terrible one.
Yeah,
you remember that, right?
Yeah.
They made that. Obviously, it sucked and whatever. But they're gonna make I think they're gonna make a Mass Effect 5. It's gonna be the 5th one, but I don't think they're gonna call it that.
Yeah.
They're gonna call it Mass Effect Retribution or something like that.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's gonna be more because Andromeda was like totally separated.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna be more tied to like the original.
And that wasn't the problem, right? It's not that it's tied or not. It's, I mean, sure, that's why like nostalgia.
It's completely terrible. That's why.
Yeah, that's why but nobody ever wants to think about that. I think, is it just that it's people don't understand what good and bad stories are? Like people just can't wrap their heads around it. Like they have to be told in like buzzword form. Like
if you look at the state of like fandom of like certain IPs, it kind of is. But still like, but ultimately the game and like movies, they still fail if they're terrible. So
I suppose there's some justice in the world.
I mean, like it's still really important. Obviously, like if it was a good game, it would have not failed. But like the hype and stuff, it wouldn't maybe be there as much. I don't know.
Yeah. Let's see what I want to lead off with. Everybody should watch Severance. Yeah. That's what you should take away from this movie.
Watch Severance.